there's not a whole heck of a lot to say about royalty income, actually. So as I mentioned earlier, this is payment for the right to use intangible property, oil and gas rights, copyrights that you've paid to use, or that somebody's paying you to use. If you've created something and you're receiving royalties for some intangible, then that would be considered royalty income. Royalty income does not, it's not considered earned income. So there's no Social Security or Medicare tax attached to it. Which means that sometimes there can be some nuances and complexities in determining whether or not something is a royalty or if it's a business. Okay, oftentimes like authors, if they've written a book and they're receiving royalties from the sale of that book, oftentimes that is considered earned income because they actually did work to earn that income, right? So there are some, it can sometimes be kind of complicated to try and figure out the difference between the two. Because it's to the taxpayer's advantage to classify something as a royalty as opposed to as earned income, right? Because you're not going to have that self-employment income attached to it. And you can also, so royalties, you can also offset the income with any expenses as well. So this is it's a beneficial classification of income. But you got to be careful that you're actually reporting it properly. Oops, there we go. This is, so the 1099 miscellaneous, the same form that we use for reporting rent income is used to report royalties. Now again, just like any other information form, W-2s, any other different types of 1099s that are out there, all of the information is going to be the same, but they may look a little bit different. This one looks like one that's on maybe half of a page. There are those that are divided up 4 per page. There are some that are 3 per page, but all of this income is still on there. Royalties would be listed in box 2. Rental income would be listed in box 1. We won't go through any of the other ones other than to say, so federal income tax withheld, if any income tax was withheld, then that would be in box 4. Royalty payments do not include payments for services, even when the services performed relate to a royalty producing asset. So, payments received for the transfer or sale of a copyright or patent are not royalties, but proceeds from the sale of a capital asset. So if you sell a copyright to somebody else, that copyright is a capital asset when it's sold. But if somebody pays you for the right to use your copyright, so for example, you own an NFL franchise and you own did the Lions win last night?
Yep.
Okay, good. You own the Detroit Lions and you give merchandisers the right, well, you don't give, you sell merchandisers the right to print Lions sweatshirts, then they are paying you a royalty, right? That's an intangible asset. That image is an intangible asset, and they're paying you for the right to do that. You're not actually working to do it. You own some intangible and somebody's paying you for that. But if you actually sell that copyright, then that would be a capital asset that would have to be reported as a capital asset on that Schedule D and 8949. So, should royalty income be reported on Schedule E or Schedule C? It depends. If the royalty is a result of a trade or business, the taxpayer should report the royalty on Schedule C. If the royalty is from a non-trade or business activity, such as an investment, the royalty income should be reported on line 4 of Schedule E. So here they got an example here. Shay, the author of a best-selling book of poetry for which he receives royalties. He also presents seminars and readings of his book of poetry throughout the country. Shay's payments for the readings and seminars are not considered royalties. That would be for a service, or I don't know how you'd classify that, but that'd be on Schedule C. He reports his income from the readings and seminars on Schedule C. Now, I disagree with their assessment here. I think this should all be reported on Schedule C. They say it should be reported on Schedule E, but I would err on the side of caution and report that on a Schedule E, because that book was part of his work, right? That's my opinion. There can be differences of opinion on this stuff. Ultimately, the tax court would decide whose opinion was correct. The IRS would side with me because they're gonna get more income. The taxpayer wouldn't be too happy with me because they'd rather report it as a royalty, but that would be my opinion here. What does it say? Well, obviously they would prefer to report it on Schedule E because that self-employment tax. Now, if the individual is over the Social Security threshold, then the tax impact isn't quite as large as if they were under that Social Security, that 147. Let's see. Neha is a full-time author of mystery novels. He has an office in his home and no other source of income. So they make a distinction here between, does he have another source of income or doesn't have another source of income? Again, I have a hard time separating out the writing of that book from giving the seminars about the writing of that book, but the authors have said that they're separate things. In this case, Neha receives, the royalties that he receives from his novels would be a trade or business income and would be reported on Schedule C. They're making the distinction because he has no other source of income. I don't really necessarily think that that's a defining factor personally, but again, that's just my personal opinion. Lily is a business executive with a large import-export company. She also owns some land in South Texas. Recently, a small oil reserve was discovered on her land. She began receiving royalties for the oil produced. Lily reports these royalties on Schedule E because owning the land is not a trade or business, but it's an investment. And I do not disagree with that one. In that case, so she has the land and some oil company has come in and is paying her for the right to extract the oil from her land, right? Let's see. Again, so when royalties are either way, when royalties are reported on either schedule, ordinary and necessary expenses are allowed as deductions against those. And if you look at the Schedule E, which I don't have one here, you'll remember the income's up at the top. It's like an income statement, and we've got places for expenses down there. Let's see. Anything here? Yeah, not really. Any questions? So, like I said, there's a lot of nuance here, disagreements. You'll find that in lots of areas of tax as well. You'll have some preparers, CPAs that think are more aggressive than others, some that are more conservative. I tend to be on the conservative side with a lot of my opinions, my tax opinions.